We go live to Belgium for the closing of the third EU CELAC Summit.
La ciudad capital de Cumaná, comenzamos hace 15 días, ya todas sus áreas están siendo intervenidas de manera integral, así como las del Parque del Este. Estamos aquí también en el Parque La Aguada, prontamente será reinaugurado. Con esto cerramos todo el ciclo de parques de Caracas y la Gran Caracas. Tenemos parques nacionales hermosísimos que siguen recibiendo turistas día a día y cada día más, como es el Parque Nacional Guaraíra Repano, como es el Parque Nacional Morrocoy, y es la invitación para que en estas vacaciones siga siendo el destino preferido.
Formación digital, en los temas de cooperación económica, comercial, las inversiones, y luego estar movilizados juntos para defender valores, principios.
We need to stay united to defend our values and our principles.
Un mundo multipolar basado en el derecho, en los principios de la Carta de Naciones Unidas, principios de soberanía. We
need to stay united and fight and defend not only each country but the whole humanity. And in order to do that, we need to accomplish, to stay true to the international letter of rights.
Estamos todo convencidos que en un futuro, desde luego que no esperaremos 8 años para reunirnos. Esta cumbre
What is an undeniable fact is that we won't wait 8 years to do a meeting, a summit like this one. We will do it more often.
De coordinación, y hemos decidido que cada 2 años celebremos esta cumbre al máximo nivel.
So we have decided that after 2 years we're going to celebrate this summit.
Los encuentros y reuniones bilaterales, además de los resultados concretos de esta cumbre,
in order to fulfill our goals, to share thoughts and concerns.
Partenariados, desarrollar capacidades de inversión. Un tema esencial tiene que ver con los recursos naturales, las cadenas de aprovisionamiento, de suministro, tan importantes.
The main topics that are being addressed and will be addressed in the future will be economical growth, environmental problems and social problems.
Principios importantes para la Unión Europea, la calidad de las inversiones y la idea de que hay que tener colaboraciones justas, equitativas, con una capacidad de desarrollo positivo para los países.
The most important fact regarding this meeting is that we need to stay united and we need to share our thoughts and help each other indistinctively and regardless of where each country is located.
Tengo que, en primer lugar, dar las gracias encarecidamente a nuestros colegas, especialmente Ralph González, presidente en ejercicio de CELAC, y también su predecesor, Alberto Fernández.
I would like to thank you all present here today, especially the president of the CELAC and also the vice president.
Conseguir avanzar y bueno, aprobar este programa común para el futuro. Y tampoco puedo presentarme aquí sin decirles que estoy inmensamente satisfecho de anunciar tras estos intensos debates a nivel
I'm
europeo
very thankful to them and to all of you because this is a space where we can share our thoughts and we have grown through this meeting and this summit.
Se podrá formalizar jurídicamente antes de que termine la semana. Y quiero rendir homenaje a la presidencia de turno española, al primer ministro Pedro Sánchez, porque es un primer resultado tangible, operativo.
I would like to honor and to thank the President of Spain that has played an important role here in this meeting.
A nuestros amigos de América Latina y Caribe, bueno, hemos podido tratar estas cuestiones desde ayer.
Also to the President, to the other Latin American countries who have expressed their concerns and thoughts as well.
Una nota más personal, bueno, no es muy habitual, espero que no se lo tomen a mal. Es la última conferencia de prensa de mi portavoz con el que trabajo desde hace más de 8 años, así que quiero darle las gracias a Barent.
I also would like to say that this is going to be our last conference and I would like to let the word to my partner.
Gracias al presidente del Consejo Europeo. Le doy la palabra ahora al primer ministro de St. Vincent y Grenadines.
Thank you very much. Good evening. Brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen of the media. I first of all want to thank the European Union, the European Commission, Charles, and all the heads of government of the European Union and of CELAC for being involved in what will, I think, turn out to be a historic gathering. The relationship between CELAC and the European Union is stronger today than it was yesterday or the day before yesterday as a consequence of this agreement. It's a wide-ranging agreement of 41 paragraphs touching and concerning all the major contemporary issues which concern us, both regions. CELAC and, well, Europe really remade the Caribbean and Latin America and remade itself. And each region, each of their respective civilizations has to come to terms with the process of this remaking and the consequences of this remaking. States, but a relationship between civilizations. But a relationship between civilizations. Latin American, Caribbean, and European civilizations. We touched on the wide range of practical issues which Charles raised, and not everybody got the language which they wanted. You would expect that there would be disagreements, and it was hard going to get the declaration, but we have arrived at this particular point. Issues touching and concerning climate change, the financing of climate change, the reform of the international financial architecture, inclusive, sustainable development, some matters which have arisen out of history for which there are contemporary manifestations of historical legacies, like, for instance, slavery and the slave trade. Issues on Ukraine, on other conflicts, on the terrible embargo against Cuba, the question of involvement of the private sector in the development of Latin America, the Caribbean, and Europe. The issues of international human rights and good governance and multilateralism and the defense of international law, defense and promotion of international law, fundamental precepts of the Charter of the United Nations made flesh. We have been not together for 8 years in a summit, and in a sense we can borrow from a poem, I'm sure you know it, by Octavio Paz, Nobel laureate for literature from Mexico, in the poem Release, where he addresses the question that we grew, we withered, and then we sprouted again. CELAC-EU, we grew, we withered, and we have now sprouted again. And what we have to do, we have to go to our body's edges amidst the unbounded elements of the real world of life, living, and production. Thank you very much, Charles. On the basis of this declaration, we have some actions to do. We have a lot of follow-up. This is really just part of the process of the renewal and the reaffirmation of the friendship and the relationship between Europe, Latin America, and the Caribbean. We have spoken a lot over the last few days, and you'll have a lot of questions, I have no doubt, to ask. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Madam President, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Alberto. Thank you very much, Ralph. Thank you very much, Charles. Indeed, it was an excellent summit, and it really felt like a new beginning for old friends. We need each other. These are times of great geopolitical change, and like-minded friends like us need to stand together. We had good deliveries, and I want to focus on the part of deliveries for our people and for our businesses. On the first day, we launched the Global Gateway Investment Agenda for Latin America and the Caribbean. We will bring over 45 billion euro of high-quality European investment to Latin America and the Caribbean. More than 135 projects are already in the pipeline, so it's a very good start. Now, of course, together we have to shape the investment agenda, and we have to decide which sectors, which value chains to prioritize, and then we have to implement and deliver. The range of projects is very wide. It goes from clean hydrogen to critical raw materials, from data cable networks to mRNA vaccines. Important is that, and we discussed that a lot, Global Gateway is not just about how much we are investing, but also about how we are investing. We want that our investment comes with the highest environmental and social standards, with transparency about what is happening. We want to share technology and knowledge, and the training of local workforce for the jobs of the future is one of the core elements. For us, it's important in this investment, and that makes it different, that the local communities benefit from the value chain, the added value produced there. This is also in our interest because we want reliable and trustworthy suppliers. This is also the spirit of the bilateral agreements that we concluded at this summit. First, we signed a critical raw materials agreement with Chile, and we also signed 2 MOUs on energy with Argentina and one with Uruguay. They are both on green energy, and particular on green hydrogen. So truly a win-win situation for both regions and both continents. My second point is on the trade agreements. I am very confident, especially after these 2 days, that in the coming months we will be able to wrap up the negotiations with Mercosur. Our ambition is to settle any remaining differences as soon as possible and to conclude by the latest by the end of this year. And I am also confident that we will conclude the negotiations on the modernized EU-Mexico agreement in the following months. I also welcome strongly the good news on the post-Cotonou agreement. We finally made it. It was a lot of negotiations, but now we found an agreement among the member states, and we will manage to sign it soon. My final point is on the global impact of Russia's war against Ukraine. I am deeply concerned about Russia's move to terminate the Black Sea grain initiative, despite the efforts of the United Nations and Turkey. The risk is that it brings food insecurity to so many vulnerable countries across the globe. The European Union will, with all means, continue to work to ensure that food security for vulnerable people is given. As you know, we have complementary the solidarity lanes. More than 45 million tons of grain, oilseed and other products have been exported via the solidarity lanes. The Black Sea Grain Initiative added another 35 million tons. So we will for sure continue bringing agri-food products out of Ukraine to the global markets via the solidarity lane, but it is important that the blocking of the Black Sea is stopped and that the export via the Black Sea can keep on going. We discussed a lot, of course, the fact that everybody wants this war to end. And peace needs to be just and enduring, and it needs to be centered. And the core has to be the UN Charter. We discussed the importance of the UN Charter explicitly. It is the common ground for us. It is there for every single country. with the international law, and it is in all our interest to be very strong on protecting the international law and protecting the UN Charter. In this spirit, we have discussed, and it was, as I said, an excellent beginning for new friends to have a new tradition every 2 years to meet with CELAC. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam President. Al Presidente de Argentina, usted tiene la palabra.
President of Argentina, you have the floor. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. My first words are words of gratitude. Thank you, Ursula. Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Ralph. And thank you also to my dear friend Pedro Sanchez, the pro tempore President of the European Union. You've done a fantastic job. It seemed it was going to be difficult to bring together so many countries and get agreement in just 2 days of work on so many different issues. Given the current situation, the issues that are affecting Latin America and the Caribbean, and the issues that are affecting Europe as well. This was a very important moment, an ambitious meeting, and it really met the expectations with which many of us came here. It had been some time since Europe, Latin America and the Caribbean last met, and we managed to meet again after 8 years as CELAC and the EU. I remember back in 2006, Latin America, the EU, the Caribbean, I participated in a meeting. Many years have gone by since then, and I don't think we've ever had so much agreement on so many points as we have today. So that's why I'm so happy and so satisfied with the outcome of this meeting. I think it's important for our region, Latin America and the Caribbean. On the different points that Ralph was mentioning there, you will see a lot of expressions from Europe there, acknowledging, recognising problems, points of view from Latin America and the Caribbean, in which we need to confront today. As Ursula said, we are all concerned about the situation of war in Ukraine. Quite clearly, we are concerned. And the countries of Latin America have always expressed their desire to work to recover peace quickly, and that should be enduring peace. And we still say today that war is not the way within this multilateral world that has its own bodies which exist, and so we should not repeat that situation. I'm very happy that we've got the agreement on energy with Ursula, which we signed yesterday. That's very important for Argentina. There's a lot of legal uncertainty in terms of investments from Europe, and that's certainly of interest when it comes to energy. And I'm also happy because this was the first time that we had the opportunity to discuss in such clear terms a mechanism that would take us away from extractivism in Latin America. This whole idea that Latin America is just a producer of raw materials. And that has always prevented us from industrialising that primary production. And this was the first time that we really crossed the T's and dotted the I's and talked about extractivism. And I think it took 5 centuries, but we managed it. I'm saying that half in jest, but we have at last succeeded. We now can look at the products of our land, look at the value of it, count on investments from Europe, and that's very important for us, very encouraging. And it's also very encouraging that we had a very frank discussion. And at every turn, we managed to find overlap with Europe on democracy, on the rule of law, and on the full respect for human rights. And these are very solid, this is a very solid basis for the work of our countries, and it's on that basis that we achieved our agreement. So I want to thank all of you for the efforts made. My dear friend Pedro Sanchez, who's campaigning now, and that's why he's not up here with us, but who did such an important job. in inviting us here. He knows how important the issues are for Latin America. He knows how much respect and admiration we have for him in Latin America and the Caribbean as well. And we, of course, understand why he wasn't able to attend. So thank you very much to all of you. Very happy with the agreement. Thank you for your hospitality, for all of the efforts and the hospitality here in Brussels.
Gracias, señor presidente. We're going to take a few questions now. Marta from TUB. Yes, please.
¿Qué tal? Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon. I'll speak Spanish as it is the CELAC Summit. The first question is for the President of the Council and either of the two representatives from CELAC. Ukraine has become a problem in the negotiations here between all of the countries. We've got one paragraph in the Council conclusions where there wasn't agreement. Do you think this has brought into question this summit? I mean, you've got all the other paragraphs. Is this undermining the whole of the rest of the agreement? And then my second question on Pedro Sanchez. He's not here today at such an important summit because of the electoral campaign.
Deux points. Le premier...
2 points. The first point is on the position of the EU on the war against Ukraine. We have reiterated this at each and every summit. We have reiterated our determination to defend protection of the interests of Ukraine against this aggression by Russia. And if you look at this declaration, it's now been validated by both sides. You'll read in that declaration that there are a number of points that have been expressed that refer to that situation, which is having an impact on the entire world. And you will also see that there is strong determination to defend the principles of multilateralism and world order that is a rules-based world order. That is absolutely essential. And as I indicated at the start of the meeting, we are absolutely delighted that we were able to agree on a strong position. 60 countries around the table on both sides, EU and CELAC, and together with my colleague who co-chaired this, Ralph Gonzalez, I said there was just one country that couldn't agree to just one paragraph in that. When you weigh up all of the different negotiating efforts and compromises that were required in order to achieve agreement on an international agenda that is as rich as this that we had on the table for the summit, is clearly a huge success, and that was thanks to our diplomatic efforts, but also the mutual trust between ourselves and the ability that we had, not just today and yesterday, but for quite some time now, to really understand the convictions, feelings on both sides, and we were able to develop that position together. Then on the Spanish Prime Minister, I have said since the very outset that Spain is very committed. It's a diplomatic effort to prepare this summit that takes a long time between all of the EU member states and the CELAC countries, and we've seen just a few minutes ago, not only did we get agreement on this declaration, but I was also pleased to announce this agreement on the post-Cotonou situation. As you know, for months we had difficulties in the EU on this subject. For months we were trying to get consensus amongst ourselves. So I'm delighted, as I say, that thanks to our tenacity, thanks to the tenacity of the Spanish team under the lead of Pedro Sanchez, they've been able to reach this agreement, which should be legally implemented by the end of this week.
Paula, yes, from TV Globo in Brazil. Paula.
Hi, good evening. It's O Globo newspaper in Brazil. Oh. Just correcting, sorry. Good evening. So thank you for doing this. I would like to ask, during his speech here, President Lula said that the negotiation of the agreement between the Mercosur and the European Union should be based on trust and not on threats. He also said that the defense of the environment should not be an excuse for protectionism. I would like to ask the Europeans on stage mainly, of course, others could also comment. Are you threatening the Mercosur countries, and are you using the environment as an excuse to protect your economies? Thank you.
Yo puedo contestar, pero
I'm ready
for you
to
the question.
No, I'm ready to say a few words, and this is absolutely clear, and that's also the spirit during this summit, that threatening is not the way we are working on the EU side. We do not have any hidden agenda. We are extremely transparent, and we would like to strengthen the economic and the trade ties with Latin America and the Caribbean. And the President of the Commission has very well explained where we stand and what are our common goals. And I'm absolutely convinced that this high-level meeting today and yesterday was opportunity to listen to each other, to better understand what are the concerns on both sides, because there are concerns on both sides for this agreement. And I'm absolutely convinced that we share the same priorities, especially concerning the defense of the biodiversity, the importance to address seriously climate change. And one important topic we discussed today and yesterday is related to the financing, because we understand very well that the current financing system is not fair, and that's why we are absolutely determined to work together. Also, because there will be important political moments in the months to come, especially at the level of the United Nations, in order to try to make sure that all the countries across the world are assuming their responsibilities, what we are doing on the EU side, because it is absolutely true that for many years on the EU side we think that we need collectively to be serious in addressing climate change and the consequences. And many colleagues in Latin America and the Caribbean, they share and they're absolutely committed, and they can see every day the consequences of this climate change topic and this climate change issue.
¿Puedo agregar algo? Permiso.
Yes.
¿Puedo?
Go ahead first and then.
Gracias.
Yeah.
Thank you. If I may just add something. I would like to shed some light on two things. The first is that Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez did a tremendous amount for this meeting, and he was with us until just a moment ago. And then, of course, he had to go back to Spain to campaign to uphold the best democratic values in Spain. So we're very happy that he's doing that. Certainly not a nuisance for us. And then on that question, I'd like to clear up a couple of points. Lula is a friend of mine. We work closely together on this point, also together with the European Union. And the truth of the matter is that once Lula became president of Brazil, from that moment on, we were able to pick up once again reasonable dialogue with the European Union. There was a time during which there was no respect for the Amazon in Brazil, and that was clear to the European Union and countries such as Argentina. That was not just the point of view of the European Union, it was also the perspective of Argentina. And we see in the agreement with Lula that there are, of course, matters that we need to attend to. We had an agreement in July 2017. Then in December we had the announcement of the Green Deal, which will have an impact on that initial agreement. And so, of course, we have to come back to certain points and discuss them with the European Union. Ursula visited me in Buenos Aires. She also went to several other countries. And so we've expressed those points of concern, and we're continuing to work on them. And so I think we are on the right track. It's a very positive track towards an agreement. But as I said in my own speech, an agreement has to be a win-win. If you have one winner and one loser, it's not a good agreement. And so what we want to do is uphold an agreement in which everyone is happy. Thank you.
We were listening to the statements at the closing of the third EU CELAC Summit. European Council President Charles Michel said this kind of meeting will be held more often, and the next will be held in 2 years' time in order to fulfill the goals for further cooperation. Michel added the main topics addressed are economic growth and climate change. The European Council President stated the meeting put in relevance the importance of continued communication between the regions. For his part, St. Vincent and the Grenadines Prime Minister Rafa Gonçalves said they reached in the final declaration consensus for the financing to fight climate change, the question of the history of slavery, the current relations between both regions, the conflict in Ukraine and in other regions, the U.S. blockade against Cuba. The Prime Minister added there was a lot yet to accomplish. Ursula von der Leyen described the meeting as a success, as a reunion of old friends. Von der Leyen added many projects are in the pipeline to enhance cooperation between both regions and that the project covered many different fields. The European Commission President reported that several bilateral agreements were reached that will enhance win-win relations between both nations. Argentine President Alberto Fernandez further added on the success of the meeting, saying that never before so many different agreements were reached in one single meeting. We'll have more updates on this and many other topics in upcoming news briefs. Stay tuned with teleSUR English.